but I do have something that we can talk about, but we'll see if we guide the discussion in that direction.
We're live. Sorry, folks.
Hiya. This was that's a brief excerpt of one of our behind the scenes. You got anything? I don't know. You know, let's wing it. Okay.
Um, but we can pull it out of our rabbit pants, so don't worry
Yeah,
about it.
I have something in backup in reserve, but it's just going to depend on where the conversation goes. I mean, we were having a spirited conversation back in the green room talking
Yeah,
about.
we were fencing with words.
Oh yeah. Yeah, not really. I think we were in 100% agreement for a change.
Yeah, but you can spar friendly.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Don't rob me of my creativity. I can't. Don't box me in, man.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You see, there
Great
we go.
segue.
I don't know what I did.
Great segue. This is
Perfect.
apropos of absolutely nothing here. This is not what I had in the in
In the
reserve.
can.
But I've been getting a lot of. I don't know about you on YouTube. I don't know if you've been getting a lot of suggestions for shorts or not.
Like clothing.
No, the little short videos.
Yeah.
You made me think.
Have you been getting those cute little rabbit shoes with the laces?
Yeah, the pink bunny ears that come up to your knees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But it was an interview, just a little brief clip of an interview of Geddy Lee talking about creativity. He said, and see if you agree with this. Mm-hmm. He says, you start out with influences. You start out with all these people that you admire and all this talent that you're watching and everything, and you start picking up certain things from all these influences and you start putting them together. And when you get to the point to where you and people who look at your work can't tell where that influence came from, you have melded them together, and that's creativity.
And that's creativity?
Mm-hmm. Is putting your spin on it to where you've taken all these outside influences and basically made it your own.
In terms of what, like what? Like
well, he said in anything, whether it be painting or music or whatever.
In an art.
Yes, in an art.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We all steal on a continuous basis. Mm-hmm. And when I say steal, I mean whether it's conscious or unconscious. We are constant, because if you were to eliminate all external forces that bring suggestions to our eyes, our ears, and our senses, we would have to reinvent the wheel.
Oh, yeah.
So at best, what we're doing is mismatching Frankenstein monster concepts of it's kind of it's kind of, so we're not necessarily, so none of the rock and roll that we ever heard was its own thing, right. Even though it might appear that way. It's all coming from something else, the slow movement of man and woman, of humanity forwarding their ideas in that system that you're suggesting.
Yeah,
there's no other, unless some crazy examples where somebody they drop a paint bucket and it creates, because the soap was on top and some strange thing, and so then now, oh, look at this, and now it became, and that person discovered it. But we're a mismatch of ideas, right, coming from everywhere.
Right. I mean, you can apply that to sculpture. If you're attempting to recreate something that you've seen, a statue that you saw, and you don't have the right chisel, so you're using the closest thing you've got to it. Maybe you come up with a texture that you didn't plan on, but you like, and you practice creating that texture. So your influence was this other statue over here, but now you have discovered something that you like, that you're adding to it and making it your own. And I think that is basically the essence of creativity.
I I I agree, because even though, if I use the example that I always like to use, that Snow Crusher always pushes back on, which is the
Hmm.
Beatles.
Hmm.
Um, the Beatles are the perfect example. When they started, they were picking up on the sounds that were coming over
Hmm.
from America,
Hmm.
which was sort of the rockabilly blues and early rock and roll that was happening in
Yeah.
America. And they picked up on it, and they did
Hmm.
skiffle, which was a variation on the theme in England,
Hmm.
and it spread throughout. And but then, as they progressed, they got hip to the styles of Bob Dylan, which came
Hmm.
over and they spent time with. And Bob Dylan had this sort of trippiness to his lyrics, and the Beatles were then and then they did Rubber Soul.
Hmm.
And just humor me with this, just to recount the thing. Bob Dylan himself, although he influenced the Beatles, what he was really doing back home was originally snagging music from old country and western slash folk musicians,
Yeah.
like Woody Guthrie and so on and
Yes.
so forth. But then, because he had a variation of penmanship, poetry and whatnot,
Hmm.
the written word, he started to disregard the lyrics and add his own poetic thing. So he mismatched two things that create, but even that has its traces in some sort of beatnik world, and so
Well,
it's all organically crashing into itself,
mhm.
separating, taking away little. So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let me ask you: do you think that I'm of the opinion? And see if you agree with me. I am of the opinion that everybody walking the face of the earth has a talent.
Haza,
Has a talent.
yeah,
They
that's
have an
not saying much, but yeah,
they have an aptitude for something. They have a talent for something, whether they have discovered it or not, or tapped into it yet or not. Maybe you're good with words. Maybe you'd be a great author. Maybe you've got a great voice.
Mm,
Just maybe you need a little bit of training and a little bit of tuning. Maybe
yeah,
you should be painting, oils or pastels or something like that.
yeah,
Maybe it's in sculpture, whatever. I think everybody walking the face of the earth has a talent, whether they know it or not. What do you think?
yeah. Well, some people are good at picking locks, other people are good at picking noses.
Yeah, well,
So it depends on the actual element, but does everybody have something? Yeah, I mean, we all have something, but it's a tough one because it's very it's 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 a tough one. Does everybody have? Yeah, everybody. Well, I can't even say that, because what is talent? Or you said talent, right? A
yeah,
talent.
have a talent that, something that they are good at, an aptitude for, you
Yeah,
know.
but the threshold of what that entails as far as skill or appreciation from others, because someone could be talented in the most strange, out of the way, mundane thing that I can't think of right now,
Mhm.
um that's not, let's say, recognized by
Mhm.
the world at large, and yet they have, unbeknownst to anyone because they don't recognize it, some sort of talent. um and I guess that would be in. Are we talking about recognized talent from
No,
others, or
it could be something big, but just something that you are good at, something innate. I know a couple of people who have a fantastic eye for color. They can take two colors that to me look identical and sit there and break them down and go, no, see, this one's got a little bit of pink into it, and this one's got a little bit of blue over here. And if you hold it just right, you can see that. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. And that kind of thing just amazes me that they can pick that out just like that. And two different shades of white will look like as different as red and blue to them. Where
that's
to me,
pearl, that's seaside pearl white.
so it's that kind of a talent to me
Yeah,
that maybe they don't even think about it. Maybe to them it's obvious. It should be obvious to everybody else. So they've never really explored it or anything.
A lot
You
of
know.
talents go realized, unexplored.
Mhm.
It just, does everybody have talent was your original question.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, to be very honest and fair with
Mhm.
the question, like at the most precise that I can, that I'm capable of.
Mhm.
It's gonna sound like a cop out,
Mhm.
which in a way so opinion
Yeah.
is one thing,
Mhm.
and what one, so
And that's
if,
all this is.
and that's all this is. So I would say that if anything can be a talent, like
Mhm.
tying shoelaces, but you're talking about an art.
Yeah.
But
Well,
then
and
the,
not even that. Maybe you are good with your hands when it comes to mechanical things,
mhm,
but you're not very good when it comes to sculpture.
mhm.
It's both still working with your hands, but they go off in two different
A
directions.
skill, a talent, a skill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's got a skill, but the question would always fall under, okay, I'll say it like this. I think that this will sort of lead it into the right stable direction, because right now it's, there are, if any skill is a skill that is recognized as a skill, there are skills that are accomplished by the majority of people on earth,
Hmm.
and therefore they're not necessarily considered something like tying your shoe. I know it sounds ridiculous, but
Hmm.
whatever. Something as simple as that, or color matching your outfit when you
Yeah.
go out at night. Some people are really bad at that, but most people can figure on basic things.
Mhm.
Those level of skills are still skills. Brushing your teeth, combing your hair. I know it sounds mundane, but
Well,
the extra special level where
mhm.
someone's taking different things, as an example, and creating something new from it. And you led with saying, well, mismatching things that people hear and see, is that, what is that? Is that a new creation? Something to that effect you were saying earlier. Um, I think the ability to take things from the earth, from the planet, from our environment,
Mhm.
from others, and create something new with ideas and even pieces from other things, Frankenstein like, is ultimately a ultimately, I think that's what most people recognize as skill, even though, if or talent,
Mhm.
even though they don't know where those pieces came from. And
Right.
since people have amnesia when it comes to, I don't know, a chord in a song played in such a way is actually from the Beatles, but this guy played it in the context of something else. So
Mhm.
people don't know about the Beatles. Now they think this guy invented it.
Yeah.
And so now this guy, so it's kind of a robbing and stealing of
Sure.
ideas and stuff, but mundane skills we all share. So to answer the
Sure.
question, I don't know if it's mundane skills or average skills. I would say that yes, for the most part across the world,
Well,
I would assume, since we have a brain and arms. But if you're talking about like
I
like
I,
on,
I was dovetailing into creativity.
so if it's in the creative level
Yes.
and you're saying most people,
Hmm.
and you're using examples like working with your hands and such, not just music, yeah,
Yeah.
I would lean towards everybody has something.
Yeah. I think
But
everybody has something to contribute anyway.
yeah, yeah. I mean, for the most part.
Hmm. I mean, you know people who are excellent storytellers.
Hmm.
They can take the most money. I went down to the store and I got a loaf of bread, but they can tell that in such a way that you're laughing or you're with them on the trip, and it's not just a mundane activity because something they noticed, off of the corner of their eye, and they say, oh man, and there was this kid pushing a shopping cart and he got it over. I was thinking, kid, go over to the ramp. The ramp is right there, but he wouldn't do it, and the cart fell over and spilled everything out of the cart.
Yeah,
You or I may or may not have missed that. uh, so, but people who can tell a story better than other folks can.
yeah. But
you know
better is always subjective.
Obviously it's going to be subjective, but
We're stuck in that problem, Mark. That's the problem we're all stuck in.
oh
So
sure.
even so, here's the thing we're stuck in. Well, I know we already know this, but just to say,
Hmm.
we're stuck in a situation where we have things that are constants are constant across the population in terms of, let's say, within the country. And if you grew up in certain eras and you were exposed to certain things, um, you might, at the very least, have knowledge or awareness of a certain thing. So another person will get along with the concept or agree to it. But you then start to have variations on. So the problem is it's very organic. So
Mhm.
when one says, if something is a positive skill or a negative skill or any number of things, you get into the weeds of people are complicated. Um,
Sure.
so what's obvious for one person might be completely
Oh, sure. It's all
yeah
100% subjective because maybe you're
yeah
not interested in hearing about a trip to the store. Maybe your mind is focused somewhere else. But it can go in several different directions. I mean, there are people out there who are just, they have an aptitude, they have an ear for, and they have the ability to learn multiple languages. And that has always fascinated me because I have a hard enough time with English. So for someone to know multiple languages and to be able to converse with a native speaker of that language, to me that's fascinating. Now when
yeah
you hear about these people who know five, six, seven different languages fluently, it's like, wow, that to me that's impressive, where it may not be to anybody else.
yeah
Or a multi instrumentalist, someone who can play guitar and piano, or and maybe two different wind instruments and a brass instrument.
mhm.
I mean, to me, that is impressive as heck. But then again, because I never developed those skills, the ability to play an instrument is impressive to me anyway. But
yeah
when you
yeah
start going in degrees of complexity, and the ability to think about and transpose on the fly, that just blows me away. It's
yeah I mean, and music is another language because there's
Mhm,
a set parameter. I mean, it's another language. It's a set parameter that you can play within. Just like
mhm,
with language, you have set parameter,
mhm.
and then you can play within that to create novels and articles and so on. And so, it's a language as well. And having multiple, I'll just say, well, you have something. Go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead and finish up because I'm just going to dovetail on something you said there.
Well, I will go ahead because I
Okay.
I might take us in a different
Well,
direction.
you were saying that music is a language. I have heard it said, and let's see if you agree with this. I have heard it said that music and mathematics, they are the only true universal languages because it doesn't matter what language you speak, an A is an A,
Mhm.
always was, always will be. A one plus one is two, always was, always will be. So it doesn't matter what language you write these in, or you read these in, or in the case of music, play these in. It is truly universal. Do you agree with that or no?
Yeah, but it's limited. I mean,
Mhm.
it's if you
Obviously, there will be cultural differences. I mean, the music of India is different from the music of Germany, which is different from the music of Uganda. But the notes themselves are still the same.
yeah, the problem is that language
Mhm.
deals with abstract ideas and concepts being placed within that sort of holding spot of a word or a series of words, and you can't to describe things around you. Like it's
Right.
nighttime, you can't do nighttime in a literal sense
Hmm.
with music alone, but you can give impressions
Right.
that would allow the mind, the creative mind, to say, man, this song feels like nighttime. If
True.
you're removing the lyrical aspect of this musical language, because we attach the lyric, and it could be in Italian, it could be in Spanish, it
Right.
could be in English, it could be whatever,
Right.
and the two combined is a bigger picture. But just alone, its feelings and tones and emotions and
Hmm.
dreamlike things with music and words do the same, but words also have abstractions that are pulled
Sure.
into the confines of a word so
Right.
that we can actually shorthand broader concepts.
Well, yeah, and there's also inflection and tone and things like that,
And
so
that gets it even more complicated.
right, and so there's a lot of nuance, but um, for instance, somebody who plays guitar and can read music, who is from Japan, could pick up the sheet music for a flamenco tune, and he may not be able to sit and play it, sight read and play, but he'll recognize the notes.
Mhm.
They recognize the music. He may not, okay, he may get the tempo and he may get that. Okay, all right, fine. But he'll know what that means.
Yeah, everybody that can, but the problem is that everybody that can, I'll just say this. It's true, obviously, that they could share that experience. But here's the thing: anybody that plays music
Mm-hmm.
and an instrument or whatnot, or that reads music, are all born of that language. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
using a flowery word, but
Sure.
they're all of that. It's like saying now they're all English speakers, so now they all understand each other.
Yeah.
Whereas language, you're an English speaker. You wanna speak to an Italian. You're gonna have to work on Italian.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it requires the learning of that language. So,
Right.
is it a universal language? Yeah, it could apply. It could be applied universally when people learn the language, but they have to learn the language, and
Right.
even then, it's only at the level of this musical world. So yes,
Right.
it is. I mean, so when they say it's a universal language and this and this and that, there's also emotion attached to it.
Well, sure.
Where when people are playing music, they can't be fighting wars. You know how they used to say in the
Yeah.
60s,
Yeah.
if you're playing music, you can't be
Mm-hmm.
creating a lot of to do about nothing. You're focused on this experience. So it also brings emotional things, and it could go the opposite way too. But so it's a language. I agree with you, but it has its limitations
I
in terms of descriptiveness, like
Right.
words
Well,
do.
well, sure, obviously, and because again, you're going to have and you're also going to have different cultural themes and what have you. And to
Yeah.
some, when you get into lyrics, some things may not make sense in the language other than its own, or
Mhm.
some concepts may not make sense.
Yeah.
But the ability to sit and play the notes is truly universal if you can read music. Now, I can't read music, so it all looks like ants marching across a page to me. I just have never studied it. So I'm not saying
And
that
I
I can't.
and I strongly do believe that thing that we've touched on in the past.
Mhm.
I think it's very true, Mark. We've talked about it, and I didn't invent it,
Mhm.
but I stumbled on it and I pondered it for a bit, and I said, "Well, yeah, this is definitely." I lean on, I rest on that
Mhm.
because I think it's that strong of a case that, like you and I right now, and it could be anybody, but like in our case, are speaking English,
Right.
but put the brakes on that, everybody, because there's two things. One, you could say, of course they're speaking English. Psh, there's
Yeah.
no, let's not look further than that. They're speaking English. It's done, folks. However, it is true, but there's levels of looseness involved in all this. So we're both using English. We both grew up learning English,
Mhm.
reading the books and
Yeah.
the popular culture things and all these
Sure.
things, which allows us to, as we're driving past each other on the highway, when we exchange words that we use in this category of English,
Mhm.
we're so roughly close to each other in terms of our reference points to the things that we're saying
Mhm.
that it's mostly, I don't want to say hit or miss, it's mostly hit as opposed to miss in a general sense when we're communicating ideas because we have reference points that we both grew up with in our
Right.
respective eras. However, if you were to replace me
Mhm.
with an honest to goodness someone that was born in Spain, let's say, or
Mhm.
Cuba, or wherever, and they spoke English, but they didn't
Mhm.
grow up in the United States.
Right.
And what's more, it gets even worse because if you're talking with someone, and this is not even, let's just stick to this. If you're with someone talking with someone from Spain or whatever, but they know English,
Hmm.
but it's not their first language, but like let's say they studied
Yeah.
it and they can parlay and whatnot. There's a truckload of stuff that you may throw at them that even though they're grabbing the words that you're sending them, you might as well be talking Romulan,
Yeah.
because what ends up happening is that yes, the words are there, but the stitching together of those abstractions that make that
Hmm.
word unique to your placement in the world in Oregon or
Well, yeah.
California.
And that's what I mean by regional differences in dialects and what have you. I mean, and that's where the cliche about the America and the UK being two countries divided by a common language, because we have idioms and phrases over here that we use that they don't use, and they have idioms, phrases, and words that they use that we don't use.
Right.
Sometimes we use the same word to mean two different things
Mhm.
completely.
Yeah.
Something innocent, chips. We think chips, we think potato chips, the crunchy things in the bag that we can sit and eat an entire bag of while we're watching a YouTube video.
Yeah.
They think of them as French fries. That's what chips are to them, is what we would call French fries. Same word, same vegetable, two
Mhm.
different things, though.
Yeah. And
So,
but multiply that by
right.
X a number of things that
Oh,
we're not even aware
absolutely.
of.
Yeah.
Like I remember Jamie Page, and this is a common thing. It's not like it was doing anything strange himself, but to me it was sufficient to hear the word coming from him that I took note of it, because it was a variation so obvious to me, comparing myself and
Mhm.
what I'm used to, and it's yet English the same. And he'd say, I think it's the word think, but it's another word. But it sounds like think when he says it. It's a th word as well. See, now I forgot the darn word, but he'll use it in a sentence, and it's not the word think. It'll be part of. It's another word, but when he uses it, sounds like think. Like he ends it with that. Um, and to me, it's completely. I can deal with it.
Mhm.
Because it's not a big deal. But if you compound that
Right.
with other words, like my friend went to London on a
Mhm.
stay over to get to Paris.
Mhm.
And when he went to and he stayed over, he said, "Let me walk around London." But he was so tired, he um he laid down on a bench, and one of the bobbies came and smacked him on the foot, the bottom of the foot, and he got up and stuff. But one of the things he says that he couldn't believe, that he couldn't. He told people in London, he said, "Why don't you people learn how to speak English already?" He said it. He said it half jokingly,
uh,
but because what he was experiencing was, this is my takeaway, is that they were so, the way they speak,
mhm.
and in London, just the same. And then when he went to Paris, he understood all the parishioners, even though they had their Paris type accent when speaking English.
Uh-huh.
He was like, "Oh yeah, I can totally deal with that." But in London, he was like, "What the heck's going on here?" And
Yeah.
so it's now, and he was being forthcoming with his
Mhm.
thing, years and years ago. So yeah,
Yeah. I do have to say one thing here. Jim Dockrell got on something here. Western music has 12 notes in an octave. No, it has 8 notes in an octave. That's octave, 8, oct. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Then you go back to A.
yeah, but there's minors.
Well, there's flats. Yeah, there's sharps and flats and things
Yeah,
like that, but there's still variations on those notes. There's eight
yeah,
notes in an octave.
because you're climbing that, but it is an
Mhm.
octave of the full. Um, yeah,
Right.
it's a very limited thing. So you have to do a lot of a lot. There's a lot of combinations you could do, but
Hmm.
you have to sort of like embellish,
Hmm.
because you can go, Mary had a little lamb or
Right.
whatever. And I'm
Well,
using two different songs.
now I'm going to get in way over my head. I'm going to get in way over my head here, and I know Linda is. She. This is behind the scenes. This is, inside baseball. Linda's big thing now, while she's listening to the podcast, which is why she isn't in the chat all the time, is she stands by the bed and she folds laundry and listens to us. Now I'm going to get into music and I'm going to talk about bagpipes, and she's going to come flying over to the keyboard and jump on it. I know she is. I can see her throwing it down on the bed right now and running over and sitting down on the chair going, all right, buddy, you better get this right. Haven't I taught you anything? Bagpipes do not play sharps, flats, anything. They have 9 notes. So the big joke is it's only 9 notes. How hard could it be to play? What they Yep, there she is. 9 nits, low G to high A, no sharps, flats, majors, minors, or chords. And she said she's already there. That's where I was going to go with this. It's only 9 notes. How hard could it be to play it? And they use those embellishments that you're talking about, like a slide or a grip or something called a turlua. It's a rapid fire tapping of another note that to embellish the note, because it is like you say, they could da 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 da, and that's boring as watching paint dry.
I'm trying to remember what song that is. Da, da, da,
Twinkle,
da.
twinkle, little star.
Oh, okay. I was calling it Mary Had a Little. I was using the lyric from Mary Had a Little Lamb to Twinkle, Twinkle.
Well, I guess it could if you.
Mary had a little lamb.
That'll really cheese people off. That'll cheese people off, and I'm doing this for Al. Watch me. I'm doing this for Al. That'll cheese people off almost as bad as saying, I love Star Wars.
Return of the Jedi.
That's it. So, no, there are no minor notes. There are no, they're just the 8 major notes, low G to high A. That's it.
And all the cool cats back in the 60s were getting high on that A.
Yeah, basically. Grip, burl, tackum, turlua, Kronrath. Yeah, all those other good things. Yeah. So, living with the piper, I have learned just enough to be dangerous and sound stupid when I try to talk about it. So that's why I don't talk about it a whole hell of a lot.
Let me mess up another song. I'm the Pied Piper. I'm the Pied Piper. Pie, 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 pie.
Yeah, right.
Because there's that too, which is another Frankenstein monster.
What's
and
that?
You've seen it on YouTube, where people take the music of one band and the singing or something other of the other band, and then they crunch it together, and it's now this new thing. I forget what they're called. They're called something.
Mashups.
Mashups. Yeah.
Now, speaking of which, this is kind of related to that, but not really. Have you ever listened to the Postmodern Jukebox?
Is that like those ladies that sing that jazzy stuff?
Kind of, sort of.
The clown guy?
No. No, that's somebody's pity party. I can't remember the name of it. But Postmodern Jukebox, they'll take a popular song or a classic song or whatever, and they'll play it in a different style. Some of it is old jazz. Some of it is like country western. It just depends on the tune and what they're going to change it up. But they'll completely change the tempo, change the style, change everything. And some of it is that 40s jazz.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it right there. Thank you, Al. Puddle's Pity Party.
Yeah.
So
I'm Puddles, the pity clown.
Sometimes I think that can be real fun. There is, I can't remember the name of the group. They're a bluegrass group. And I'm sure somebody out in the chat knows this. They're a bluegrass group, and they'll take AC/DC songs and play it bluegrass. It sounds cool as hell because it just works. And you haven't lived till you've heard Thunderstruck on the banjo. You know.
Dun,
Yeah, it's just it's funny, and I can't remember that Steven Seagal's. I think that might be it. But anyway, I got way off topic and lost myself, and the train of thought has departed the station. So take over.
America has no culture. How about those people?
No, okay. So my uh, great grandmother's Lakota culture means nothing, huh? So yeah,
I
we
threw that out because that's the one thing. Because talking about the mismatching of things, that's basically what this is.
well,
There's a lot of mismatching of ideas and concepts
mhm.
organically, sort of like like I guess like a crucible, if you would, and then out pops out rock and roll as an example.
That was the name of that bluegrass group, Steven Seagulls.
Okay.
Look them up on YouTube. They got some great stuff, and I mean they take some of the hardest stuff you could think of, hard rock and roll, a lot of metal, and play it bluegrass style, and it just works. It's fun.
Yeah, it's
Oh
that
man.
mismatching of ideas that, but we have enough prior reference points
Hmm.
to hear where the mashups are occurring
Uh-huh.
in certain cases. And if you're very skilled for whatever reason, you can even pick up where that happens within songs from back in the
Mhm.
day.
Yeah.
I have been able to do that with very popular bands. Now there's a little bit of and sometimes they'll admit where they got the riff from.
Yeah.
So in some cases they'll give you a clue. Like John Lennon, I mean there's so endless but like John Lennon said, "Oh, I totally snagged the lyrics from Chuck Berry when singing Come Together."
Yeah.
Here come old flat top. Well, that's completely Chuck Berry. I mean,
Yeah. He come
Chuck
grooving
Berry
up
literally
slowly. Yeah.
says, he literally says, "Here come old flat top."
Hmm.
So it's snagged. But
Well, but they all do that because John Fogerty did a song in the '90s called Center Field, and one of the first lines of the lyrics is "rounding third and headed for home. It's a brown-eyed handsome man," which was a complete nod to Chuck Berry,
yeah,
one of his tunes.
yeah, it's
You know.
very difficult because you know how people get a little bit stringent when it
Hmm.
comes to, you took that from, there's a proper this and that for everything, but even that is opinion,
Hmm.
because what's legal is one thing and what's opinion is another. But I feel within the world of creativity, little nods like that, without them we don't have creativity.
And that's what it is. It's a nod to them. It's a salute. It's an homage to them. It's
Yeah,
acknowledging this was a brilliant lyric, or
well,
this was a brilliant riff, or
well,
something like that.
it comes attached,
Hmm.
that nod. So when John Lennon took that lyric,
Hmm.
"Here come old flat top," um it's not just that instance of that nod. What
Hmm.
he's actually saying in not so many words, in order for him to introduce that into the song, it could have been a neither here nor there, and he just threw it in. That's fine.
Hmm.
That's true. But in their case, these people were huge fans of Chuck Berry. They
Oh
were
yeah.
probably like many of us, sitting in their bedrooms many a nights, playing the Chuck Berry songs over and over and over and over. I know I did. I did. I did. I mean, long after the fact, but I would
Hmm.
sit. I don't know how many of my friends were doing that, but I was, because I was studying,
Hmm.
music, self taught, to be fair. But you can't help to think that John Lennon is not only just paying homage,
Hmm.
homage, He's paying one of the two
His
to Chuck Berry.
respects.
His tipping the hat, and but behind that
Hmm.
means that he's played those songs, and which we know he had for years and years, and they had conversations about it, and they discussed it. And so it's, you can't divorce these musical ideas from each other.
No, it's impossible to do. And I've heard it said that jazz and blues got together and had a child and they named it rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
And I firmly believe that is the case, because if you go back and you listen to what we're talking about, the birth of rock and roll, Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, not Fats Domino, well, Fats Domino too, Little Richard, and Bo Diddley, and the rest of them. They took the jazzy components, applied it to the blues, and brought up that tempo. And it was like, I mean, Maybelline, why can't you be true? I mean, I just knew he was singing that for me because that was my music, and it I don't know. It's, man, I could go off in so many tangents right about now, but going back to what Geddy Lee was talking about, taking all those influences, because I also happen to know that the Beatles were huge fans of Roy Orbison, just absolutely crazy about him. So much so that when Jeff Lynne and George Harrison were kind of toying with the idea of the Traveling Wilburys, they both immediately said, well, who would you want to get in on this? They both immediately said Roy Orbison.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an interview with Jeff Lynne. Oh, it's been a few years back now, talking about the Traveling Wilburys. He said that Orbison was the one guy that no matter who was playing or performing or doing whatever, whenever Orbison got up to do his part when they were recording, everything stopped and they all just stood and watched.
Yeah, I mean, the Beatles, that song, Please Please Me, totally inspired in part by Roy Orbison. The come on part. Come on, come on, come on, come on, please, please. That whole part was explicitly explained by the Beatles that it came from frickin' Roy Orbison. And the original recording of it was a slowed down version of it, or that's how they played it. And then George Martin, the producer, said, we got to make this as pop as possible, so let's speed it up. So they ramped and it actually made it the thing that it, but originally John Lennon was like, come on, like Roy Orbison.
Trying to imitate Roy Orbison, Harrison was in love with the guy just about. I mean, it was a huge fan. But anyway, we got way off on a tangent.
He's a very dark, to me. Roy Orbison represents a very, and that's not true for him in himself, or that I am aware of, but his music represents a very dark impression to me when I've ever sat and played his songs, back to back. There's a like a opening up a door and walking through a darker passages. There's something melancholy too.
Yes.
And
well, I mean, you only have to look at his more popular songs to see that this was not a happy bunny. He was always the lonely one. He was always the one who was hoping for something else.
It's an incredible. Yeah, I personally was drawn to Roy Orbison's music. I mean, in the time, because I was consuming music. But anyways, getting away from slightly from music, as far as art, with what we were saying, and humanity and all these things and creative. One of the oldest discoveries of art in Europe was one of the oldest, from thousands and thousands of years ago, was discovered in the caves of Altamira in the northern part of Spain, in Cantabria. It was the first find, and later they found more of them in France, and whatnot. But early on, a shepherd and his daughter were messing around, traveling around the mountainside, and they discovered a cave, and they went in, and it was the daughter that pointed up at the ceiling, and she says, "Look, what are they called? Like buffalo or whatnot, bulls or whatnot." She look, it's a bull, And and the father was like, what? And they looked up and boom, they discovered it painted there. Well, um, and years later, some years later, like in the 1920s, then my great granduncle was involved in discovering a second entrance to those caves, to literally to the caves of Altamira. And so now they have it blocked off. But anyways, the reason I'm bringing it up, because I have a reference point, but is that those caves have art in them that was done in a time, as far as they know, that people lived in these caves for shelter and protection from the beasts outside, and they painted what they saw outside.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: we're talking about thousands and thousands of years ago, according to all the thing. We're talking about hunter-gatherer times. I mean, back they were painting these murals, and they were using the rock formations to create 3D depth. And they were painting it with whatever the chemicals that they had. They that they break, but they were
charcoal and ochre and things. Yeah,
all whatever they. And the images that they left were actual, as close to what do you call lifelike for thousands and thousands of years. And some people have mentioned in documentaries and whatnot that these places were there for these thousands of years and visited by people for thousands of. In other words, generation after generation would come, and they've suggested that they added to them as the generations went. And some people have suggested that they were coming because this was a hermitage type idea, where they come to see those images. It gets complicated, but and they would see these things, and they even suggest that there was a religious aspect to this, a coming together type thing, and the animals on the thing. Well, here's the thing: these images were done in the depths of darkness, deep into caves that just go caverns that go in and in, and you have to think.
Well, they had to have had burning torches or something like that to be able to see what they were doing, obviously. But yeah,
you have to think that. But exactly that they had to in order to see. But they would take these treks to see these figures and whatnot and this and that. Well, anyways, the point is that that's a very early, if not one of the earliest. I mean, to see that. And then in the 60s or earlier, Picasso came to see them, and he started drawing bulls.
Yeah.
And if you look at Picasso's drawings, you can infer where he was getting it from. Plus, Spain has this sort of bull culture where the running of the bulls and what that stuff they do in the arena.
And Pamplona and bullfighting and all the whole thing. Yeah.
But my point is to kind of take us to where we're going. Here you have an example of something so freaking ancient being inspiring someone of our modern era to create cultural images that inevitably, those images inspired other people other than Picasso. Yes. And you find it now everywhere, the image of the bull and such in that style and stuff. And so things do get taken and repurposed and added to in some sort of Frankenstein way.
Sure.
Even across distances in time, what we're mentioning. So there's a lot of, we probably don't, it's hard for us because we're sitting here in the 2023, but a lot of the stuff that's come to us, I mean, we're so lucky because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I know we've talked about that before, but
we've talked about a lot of it before, but you're 100% right. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have the advantage of hindsight. Now, talking about those cave paintings, this is fairly recent, within the last few years. I'm going to get the discipline wrong. Is it paleontologists, or do they study dinosaurs? We're talking about people who study ancient man. Anyway,
DNA wise,
anthropologists.
Well, I'm not sure
No,
which
studying old cultures. They were studying these cave paintings, and
archaeologists.
somebody, well, yeah, the archaeologists deal with the physical. So what they were, what they discovered was they were mystified by a number of common elements in all of this. Yeah, see, I wasn't sure if it was an anthropologist or not, but they found some common things in a lot of these cave paintings. Not all of them, but a good percentage of them. And that if you look at the cave paintings of like the bull, for example, that's the most famous one. Um, there are dots and other animals drawn either within the bull, the figure of the bull, or to the side or real close to it. And they never really could figure out exactly what that is. I'm going to have to go find this video, and it's going to take me a while because I saw this about a year ago. Well, what the newest theory is that they were keeping track of important life cycles of these animals because, again, they were hunters and gatherers, and that the series of dots was an indication of when the herd migrations were going to either come through the area or leave the area. They're not really 100% sure which yet. The animals with the other animals drawn within them, they think is the significance of the birthing season and when the cows were giving birth to their calves. And so they think that this is a fairly new theory. They think that along with just being art, this was also a way of keeping track of when they could expect to see these animals and when they could expect to not see these animals. And because, like, the bulls or the oryx at the time were not the only animals in these cave drawings. There were stags and elk, deer, rabbits, all kinds of different birds. And it was the drawings of the birds that made them notice these dots and pay more attention to them because most of these birds were migratory. And so when you did see the birds, they would notice a series of dots. They don't know quite yet what those dots exactly mean. Was it like a lunar calendar or a solar calendar or something like that? But it is a theory, and it's being investigated still, that this was not just art for the sake of art. I mean, they have found more than just animal drawings. They have found where people would put their hand up against the wall and take a piece of charcoal and just draw around their hand.
Yeah.
And you would have a large hand, then a slightly smaller hand, then a little bitty hand. So you could just picture mom, dad, and the kid all tracing around their hand on the wall of this cave.
Yeah, I think I remember them saying in one documentary, suggesting, well, this is an example of saying we were here.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
art for the sake of art. And they're not so much, it's almost like the silhouettes that were being done in the 16 and 1700s. Before photography, and you couldn't afford a portrait,
Mhm.
you just put a candle over here and then you trace around the shape and then cut out the silhouette, a white silhouette with a black background, or vice versa, black silhouette with a white background.
And then they had the death masks as well.
Yeah, another thing. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Jim says that all the theories are from the view of a 20th and 21st century mind. Yeah, that's true, because we can't talk to anybody that was there, so we have to go back and try to figure it out.
Yeah,
And
but think about that.
you know,
Not that's there's no way other than what Jim wrote.
yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm
No,
not
I know you're
disagreeing
not,
with
but
it at all.
I'm saying it
Yeah.
I'm saying that, yeah, we're all we have right
Mm-hmm.
now. So like there's
Yeah.
no other way around it. So like it's like yeah, I mean we have no other than time travel, which we do
Hmm.
not have. There's no other way. We
Yeah.
can only proceed according to our position in the universe, uh like right now. And with that comes a little bit of amnesia as to, or not even amnesia, just
We don't know.
oblivious to any number of things,
Yeah.
that would enlighten us if we did know,
Yeah.
as to,
But
one way we can go ahead.
well, I was going to say, but you can only divine so much from a stone axe.
Mhm.
I mean, you can get a lot of information about it, but it can only go so far, and it's only going to be about that particular thing. Now, it may confirm or deny a certain people were here at the time where this stone axe is, assuming that the ground hasn't been disturbed in that long. But you're that's about it. Everything else is speculation.
In the context that you're saying, it's speculation, but and just for everyone else,
Mhm.
but that's not to say, in my opinion, and it can be, I mean, there's that, if you take a specific example,
Mhm.
I mean, what are we talking about here would be the question, because if we're talking about, you said anthropology and such,
Mhm.
and archaeology and all that, um there's no mystery in terms of that the Greeks existed,
Right.
which we call Greeks
Mhm.
today, but they didn't call themselves Greeks.
No, they didn't.
They were Hellenistic
Right.
people for
City
themselves.
states all over the place. Yeah.
Um, there's no there's no way around that. There's structures in a place called
Mhm.
Mesopotamia,
Right.
which has writing. There's
Right.
no doubt that there's things called the Jewish religion that has been, documented not only in the Bible, but in other pieces
All
of
kinds of
work,
documents. Yeah.
right, that converge with a notion. So
Right.
unless we don't go into a specific subject, then we can openly say, well, there's a lot we don't know, because there's always a lot we don't know.
Sure.
But we do know that there is a history, according to the things that were left behind due to civilizations passing away or whatnot.
Mhm.
So yes, there's a degree that we can know up to a point,
Right.
and then there's, what do you call it, a speculation.
Yes. Because it's more than one source. It's not just that stone axe. 2 miles away, they found a Neolithic dwelling, and over here they found evidence of this, and over. So it's the sum of all of this input that's getting collated and put together. And
Yeah.
the people that are collating and putting all this together may never go out into the field. They may never be a part of an archaeological dig,
Mhm.
but their job is to take all this information and put it all together. And so some of it is going to have to be told from the aspect of this much we do know. We can confirm there were Neolithic structures here. We can confirm cave paintings here. We can confirm that we found this stone axe and we found arrowheads and we found flint knives here. This we can confirm, this we know. Everything else we're not sure, because matter deteriorates over time. We don't know what they wore. We can
Yeah,
only speculate.
yeah. There's a point to which they can't go further. But in
Right.
order to make that statement, uh, in a broad sense, that's absolutely true. But in a specific sense, if you were to say that, if you're talking about Mesopotamia,
Mm-hmm.
you have all this information
Mm-hmm.
due to
Yes.
the things that they left. You
Well,
know, it's a lot. You
and a
know,
written language changed everything. The Rosetta Stone changed everything because now we could read the other languages. We could decipher the cuneiform, we can decipher the hieroglyphic, and we can decipher parts of this language here. And it got us going on their way. A written language, that is evidence, especially if it's something written at the time and not 200 years later, when its memories are foggy and it's passed through how many hundred people before it got to the guy that wrote it down. um, so that was the game changer. That's why we know so much about civilizations going back through the Roman period and the Greek period to a certain point and then stopping, because either those writings haven't survived or there weren't any writings. So, and then we're forced to speculate.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
I mean, we can only have what we have. Now, a good thing that has happened is the extraction of, which has come along in recent times, the extraction of DNA from bones.
mhm.
Um,
They have learned so much about migration and the movement of people
it's ruined.
just for that.
It's ruined previous assumptions on such an earth-shattering level,
Well, maybe
and
that's
not only, and not, what was that?
maybe that's a good thing.
And but not only for like like the public at large with certain
Mhm.
concepts, but within archaeology, because for centuries and roughly as things advance more to do in our time, like in the
Mhm.
past 100 200 years, there were certain assumptions about certain civilizations and this and
Mhm.
that. And when they study the DNA of these people that are buried in such places, they start realizing certain connections or lack of connections in ways that mess with their, so some things are uncomfortable for these people because what ends up happening is that now they have to rewrite stuff, or
Yeah,
they have to add information because it discredits what they
yeah.
wrote about it so confidently, even though they had all these material stuff.
But
But a slight shift in information
yep.
creates this whole new window, and so that's what
Well,
the DNA thing has done. It's
a true
savage.
scientist knows when he has to say we were wrong.
Well,
New
no.
information has come to light. A true, honest
Oh
scientist
well, yeah.
has to be willing to say we were wrong.
Yeah,
We
but when you're invested,
we had this, and this, and now this came in from left field, and this is irrefutable.
when you're invested though, and you have
Sure.
money based on and a whole curriculum and like professors, and it makes,
Oh yeah.
do you really want to make 100 years of professors and whatnot look dumb? Well, maybe they don't look
Well,
dumb if you think of it in terms of this is what they were working with what they had, but people do have egos, and so
sure.
there's financial things, so it's a slow process where people can't say no, and they say, okay, fine, we accept this. And so it's a little bit of that, you know.
Yeah. I mean, when antiseptic medicine came along, doctors were in denial for, oh God, decades, that it couldn't be possibly anything that we were or weren't doing right. It couldn't possibly be us, until the invention of the microscope. And then it's like, yeah, you're not washing your nasty hands. You just take them out of one body and put them in the next body. You're spreading germs all over the place. That revolutionized medicine. And only then did doctors actually start healing people instead of making them sicker. You know, but it's not that their intent was bad. Their intent was to heal these people and treat their wounds.
They just didn't know.
They just didn't know. But then when the knowledge came, what you're talking about, the investment, the ego, the social stature, the funding, all of that was threatened. So of course they're going to deny it.
Yeah,
It couldn't
it's an
possibly be.
even, it's kind of a tug of war, through time, when new information comes out. Like there's a guy that, and I don't know because I haven't like delved, like it's not really, but there's a guy from that likes Egypt stuff. He's like an archaeologist type guy, and he's proposed for the past, I don't know how many decades, or maybe a decade or two, that there was flooding and erosion on the Sphinx in terms of water, as opposed to just um, the natural decay through time.
Mhm.
And basically, like, you'd have to go and check, but basically, what he suggests is that the Sphinx is way, way much older than what's reported currently. And according to what you see, and I don't know how much of it is true because it's not like I'm exploring it beyond
Yeah.
watching the documentaries, but um, they say that, like, the Egyptians
Mhm.
that have control of that are not down with that plan. And the argument is that they're not, because they already have a set story and they don't want that changed, but that this evidence is very important. So I've seen them pointing to the erosion, this and that, but what do I know
Yeah.
as a layman
Mhm.
as to what erosion and time
Yeah.
period of erosion is compared to now? It sounds compelling, but
Mhm.
I, as a novice, have no freaking idea
Yeah.
whether that's true or not. So maybe the
Yeah.
Egyptians, there's been a one way or the other, there's been a campaign to give a little bit of distrust towards what the Egyptologists say officially,
Mhm.
and these people coming in. But what you see is that these people, doesn't make them right or wrong. But
Right.
what you do see is that these people are pushing their own books. Obviously, everybody's trying to make money. Pushing their own books with their conspiracies over the. And I'm not saying whether they're right or wrong. I don't
Yeah.
know either way.
Yeah.
But you see a push with this timetable situation and this, and it affects everything and stuff. So there's money involved
Well,
inside.
sure. There's going to be money involved because, well, let's stop and think about it. What is Egypt's biggest attraction? The
The
pyramids
pyramids.
of Giza. And the Sphinx. So if something is discovered, now I don't necessarily see it being discovered that it's actually older than they first thought. I don't see that as being a bad thing. In fact, I see that as a good thing. That would just tend to bring more people there who were maybe on the fence about it. It's 10,000 years old. Well, there's lots of stuff 10,000 years. Oh, wait, it's 20,000 years old. All right, we got to go check this out for ourselves. I mean, I don't see how that announcement would make any real,
No,
difference. But then again,
you haven't looked into it further than
no,
that.
I haven't. And it's a new theory. And
Yeah.
people are going to be hesitant. This kind of dovetails in with the thing that I had in the background here. Have you ever heard of Chesterton's fence?
No.
Chesterton's fence is basically you come across a fence that's blocking a road. Okay. You don't know why it's there, but you look around and you say, I don't see any use for this. So let's get rid of it. Put simply, the story of Chesterton's fence is don't ever take down a fence until you know and understand the reason why it was put up. You may not see any reason for that fence to be there. You may not see it, we may not see any reason why the antiquities departments over in Egypt would be against this theory. Maybe they have reasons, maybe they don't. Maybe they're just as blindsided as you and I would be. But don't disassemble it until you know why it was there to begin with. Let's look at it, you know, and that it can carry on into all kinds of different things. You know, it's real easy to say, well, this is stupid. Well, it might be stupid, but it's there for a reason. When you understand what that reason is, now we can talk about, do we need it? Can it be taken
Let's
down?
let's tear that ancient thing down, because we gotta get this McDonald's up and running.
Exactly. Exactly.
We got burgers to sell here, folks. Tear
Mhm.
that statue down.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it goes beyond that. It goes beyond the physical, and it can get into, say, you work for a company and they're using software on their computer. They're using computer systems that are run on Windows XP and software that was made in 2001. And people have just figured out a way to work around all the shortcomings and work around all the bugs and everything. Well, but a new guy comes in and says, well, this is stupid. Let's get Windows 10 computers or Windows 11 computers with new updated software.
Now they can't work on all their previous stuff.
And yeah, and there are machines that rely on that old software that can't be upgraded or updated.
It's been my argument every time I tell you guys that I don't want to upgrade my stuff.
And you have never heard me say you need to get rid of Windows 7 and get Windows 11.
You have suggested every now and again, you have suggested, dude, maybe it's time for a new computer.
Well, but I'm not talking about get rid of that one.
No, I know. You said have it a secondary.
Yeah, yeah, because there's no law that says you can only have one.
Yeah, but I'm like I'll use the cottage and all the utensils till everything like comes apart, like it just breaks into dust in front of our hands. This spoon was perfect. This wooden spoon was perfectly fine just 100 years ago.
Yeah, really.
I'm willing to use this. I just grew up that way. Remember, we come from people that grew up with parents that came from the Great Depression.
I've got a perfect example, and this happened like 5 minutes before I came in here, and you showed up, and we pushed the button. I went to flush the toilet, and pushed the handle down. You heard the water start to flush, and then the handle just went bloop like that, and the flushing action stopped. Oh man, what happened now? Put the seat down, take the tank cover off, look down. The little chain that runs the flapper valve broke. Now, this is not the first time this puppy has broken. We have fixed it with paper clips, and we fixed it with stainless steel wire, and we've replaced sections of chain and everything else, because I will not go down to Lowe's
and get one brand new chain.
Get a new flapper valve with a new chain. Not because I have anything against it.
It's just that.
It's just I don't think about it when I'm down there.
Mm-hmm.
I only think about it when it breaks. But
yeah.
that's a prime example of what you're talking about. Use it till it's used up and busted, and give me a roll of masking tape, I'll fix it. You know.
I mean,
don't go down and buy a new one. No, that would be foolish.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, and we do have plenty at the store to get rid of our angst and solve the problem, but it's not sufficient angst. No. If it were sufficient, you would be there in a hot minute. But it's like, I can, okay, we'll fix it this time. I'll think about doing that, and then, you know, well, we live in the time. It's hard to say it, but we live in the time of plenty.
Oh yeah, well, Americans are spoiled big time. Big time. We are. We have so many options available to us 24/7 that we don't even think about it. And we get pissed off if we can't have it. Both of us were complaining the other day about 24-hour grocery stores aren't really a thing anymore. Used to be able to go down to Walmart at 2:30 in the morning. Now they're closed. We got to wait till 6.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Can you imagine, Mark? I had to go to the store prior to midnight and after. I had to go at operating hours and enter the store that was lit up and air conditioned, and the floors were waxed, and the aisles were full of products. And as I walked past all these wonderful creations that mankind had produced for us to consume, I would dismiss things as I walked down the aisle until I arrived at the thing that I wanted, because it's my thing, and all the other things suck.
Yeah, I don't want the one with the milk chocolate chips. I want the semi-sweet and white chocolate.
Yeah, so think about that. Well, you are, but the point is that it's like, and yet I want even more. I want it to be 24 hours open, so that when I'm in the middle of the night and I just wake up, and I'm like, I woke up, I might as well go to the Wally World and have that option. I mean, how much more? I mean, just 100 years ago, roughly. I mean, they were using gas freaking lighting
Hmm.
in town in little towns. At least in Cuba they were.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like, come on.
I got two things going here, Al. You mean you guys don't reach into the tank and pull the flapper up with your hand? Well, I did a few minutes ago. Well, no, about an hour and a half ago now. And Jamie Page says, "Do they still pump your gas for you in some places in the USA? Everywhere in Oregon, it is against the law for you to pump your own gas in the state of Oregon. There is an attendant comes out, and they put the gas in the tank. It is illegal for you to pump your own gas."
Let me tell you this story. It has not to do with gas, but it has to do with, I guess, automobiles. So what the hell? Um, the other night, I made a run to the store, to the mini mart, um, and I stopped, got out, and as I'm walking in, a guy appears out of the darkness. It was nighttime. A guy, tall freaking guy,
Hmm.
huge guy, appears out of the darkness, comes up and says, "Excuse me." He talked to me in Spanish, and I knew right away what he was saying. He was a Cuban guy, and he says, "Excuse me, forgive me for asking." And I'm sitting, I'm looking at this guy, and again, I'm thinking, how am I going to bring this guy down? If in the event of something, how am I going to figure this one out? Because dang, because the guy's tall, and he says, "Excuse me, look, can you give us a charge? Because my car, it's across the street." I looked across the street, and it's like across a major street, and it's like a whole shopping center darkened. Oh no, it had lights, but it was like empty.
Yeah.
And his truck was in the distance of that huge mall, but I could see it. And he says, "Yeah, could you give me a?" And I'm looking at him saying, "Damn, that's an empty mall. This guy wants me to go over there in an empty mall." I mean, my truck is all screwed up, so he must not think I have much money. In any event, I said, "Yeah, give me a second, and let me just get what I have to get, and I'll go." So he disappeared. But I saw them over there, so I drove across the thing. This, and got in there, and I arrive, and I park my truck, and I see his truck, and his truck is this brand new white truck, bad to the bone, freaking. It just ran out of. It has no charge, but and mine is creaking and arriving.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I'm arriving in a little wagon, and I get out, and he says, "Look, I thank you so much. Not anybody would come, at this hour and stuff." And he pulls out $20.
Hmm.
And I go, "Whoa, whoa, no." I said, "Don't worry about it. I'm doing this as a human favor." And he says, "No, no, no, no. Here." And I'm saying no, and it was no and yes for enough of an extended time where I felt that if I don't take it, now I'm insulting the guy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't do it for money. I did it
Right.
because it's another human being that needs help, and why
Sure.
not? Um, so I took the money, right? And I said, "Look, I'm taking it not to offend you, but really, it's not." And so we charged the thing, but um, and they were happy about it and whatnot, and we talked a little bit back and forth, and him and his two ladies were there, and they were traveling back miles. They
Hmm.
lived in way further south and stuff. They just happened to work there,
Yeah.
and I guess the I guess I don't know why I said the story. I guess one takeaway is that just one need, someone needs something and you
Hmm.
can provide it, and you do so. Anybody can be in a screwed up situation,
Sure. Could happen to anybody.
right? It's not even
And
here.
and it may be you next time, you know.
Yeah, well, but when he gave me the money, I said, "Look, I don't need it," and he looked at my car.
You sure about that, homeboy?
um
Maybe you could buy a door handle that works.
so so anyways, this same scenario of jumping a car at that corner store happened
Uh,
just a few weeks prior, which I think I told you was a Russian lady.
yeah.
Did I tell you that she was
Yeah,
all
you did.
nervous and stuff?
Hmm.
And she was like, "Can you help me?" in like half Russian, and I'm like, she was a little bit nervous, and I was like, "Yeah, I can help you. Let me just get my stuff." Same deal. But she was so freaking nervous, and she'd get close to me, and I'm like, "Is this like a gypsy thing where they steal your stuff?" Um, I jumped the car, but it got me so her nervousness,
Mhm.
that I even dropped the freaking hood on my head of the car. Just I'm
Mhm.
putting the thing up, and like she was like a ball of a wreck in
Yeah.
terms of this and that. But anyways, neither here nor there.
You know,
There was a reason. Maybe you said gas, running out of gas. You said, or
well, I'd said something about pumping gas, and then
and then I
they
thought of this
brought all
scenario.
this
Okay,
up.
whatever.
Jerry probably wants a crafter says there was actually a law passed in Oregon. They're waiting on the governor to sign it into law for pumping gas yourself. They've tried that about 16 times. And I'll just put it to you this way, Jerry. I'll believe it when it's passed and we hear it. Because they've tried that over the last 30 years, probably I think at least 16 times. We'll see. Oregon and New York were the last places to not allow people to pump their own gas. Yeah. I don't know about New York. I can't speak for New York, but yeah, you see in gas stations here, you see go to California or Nevada or Washington, you'll see full service or self service. Here we have full service and mini service because you don't do it yourself.
So you
So,
haven't pumped your own gas in ages.
except when I go to California. If I
Does
go
it
to
feel weird?
California or Nevada, yeah, well, you wouldn't think about it, but you kind of have to look because the pumps have changed. You have to kind of look at it and go, "Hey, how do you run this damn thing?" It ain't the take it is not take the nozzle out and flip up the lever anymore. You got to just about apply for a mortgage with all the buttons and everything. Are you paying with this with a credit card? What's your zip code? Bite me. I live down the road. You know.
It's
So
funny because it's the opposite. Well, I would feel invaded. I would feel trespassed on if somebody was paying that much attention to my vehicle. Well, number one, I don't want them to look at.
well,
Don't stare at her too much. She might fall apart.
well,
First of all.
they don't hang around long because you got one guy running 8 pumps, so he's making the rounds.
But what about getting? Do they do everything? Like they
No, they just pump the gas. That's mini service. They just pump the gas. You want the windshield. They got the squeegees and towels there
and
and
what's the
everything,
purpose of that?
but you wash your own.
They don't trust people to handle gas.
Insurance liability. Insurance liability. It's a holdover from like the 1920s.
And what if you want a gas tank like a takeaway
A gas can.
yeah.
I pull up to the pump. I take it out. I take the top off. I set it down, and I say, "Fill her up." And he fills up the gas can for me. I put the nozzle back on, put the lid on it, put it back in the
Jeez.
car, and drive away.
You know what I don't like about that? Is okay,
Mhm.
so I don't like the fact that you have to like interact with someone. I mean, I know there's always but at the place where you stop, I kind of like the idea of keeping people like as far away as possible. Like I get there, and if I have to go to a little
Mhm.
mart store, I go in, do my thing, but then I escape. Escape.
Well, you could still do all that. It's just you're not standing there holding down the lever. I mean, somebody else is doing that.
It's
You
so
just you get out and you tell here $20 and go inside instead of walking inside, prepaying the dude and coming back out and pumping it yourself. When you come back out, it's done.
yeah. And do you tip them?
No, I mean you can. I mean, I'm sure some people have, but I've never tipped him. No.
I mean, it's like, dude, I could do this myself. Sorry, sir.
Because I mean, and again, it's mini service. All they're doing is pumping the gas. If you want to dump your garbage or wash your windows or check your tires, you get out and you do that yourself.
Well,
Unless you go to the full service island, in which case they do all that stuff.
Jeez.
They wash the windshield, check the oil, do all that stuff.
Well, if they did that in Florida or in Dade County, it would produce a whole new industry or what do you call it, job force, because now you have all these attendants. But I don't know that anything's possible, but I don't know that it would be logistically possible with the sheer millions of people pumping gas. You would have to
Well,
have a bigger employment thing than
dude, up until I would say about the mid 70s, all gas stations used to be that way. They were full service and that was it. You pulled up, they had an air hose that stretched across right up there by the
ding
pumps.
ding.
You pulled up and a bing bing, and the dude come running out, and you tell him, fill her up with regular or ethyl or whatever, and they'd do that. And he'd get out his rag and go get the squeegee, and he'd wash the windshield, and he'd pop the hood and check the oil, come around, show you the dipstick. Yeah, it looks like you're good now, but you're about due for an oil change.
Yeah.
If you want to pull her around, I can put her on the rack and have you back on the road in 15 minutes. No, I ain't got time, but thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a
but,
thing. It's one of those things that I'm not. It sounds like it doesn't need to be, but then again,
and yep, Jerry's got it here. The way it used to be, a gas pump and a garage, no stuff, maybe a Coke machine, and now a full-on store, and they want you to shop. Do you know the first store to do that, the first nationwide chain to do that, combine the convenience store with the gas station? Do you remember the first company to do that nationwide?
Circle K.
Circle K wasn't. They may have done it earlier, but they didn't go nationwide with it. They weren't nationwide. I don't know.
7-Eleven.
AMPM. AMPM was the first one nationwide to combine the gas station with the convenience store.
Are there any Circle K's anymore?
We have one here.
Oh.
We have one Circle K here. I take that back. We have two. One not too far down the road from us. Then we have one at the south end of town by the interstate. But AMPM combined the gas station. They used to be, now they're called Arco. It used to be Atlantic Richfield. And I remember Richfield gas stations. But it was Arco Gas, and then they changed over to the AMPM Mini Mart.
What's that company that went out of, that's quite the nostalgic thing around the internet? We had one here, but it wasn't. I'll remember which one it was in a second.
7-Eleven.
No, it was
Quick Stop.
No, you'd find them. It has nothing to do with the gas industry. It's more to do with like a quick in and out and multi-itemed store. It's a classic American one, and people like fawn over it. No, it's more of a like a discount store. It's a famous one. I can't think of the darn name. Damn it.
Sears, Penny's, Kmart.
The other one.
That's the only ones I could think of.
So some of them had diners in them. In choice locations.
But it was a grocery store, or it was kind of like a department store?
It was kind of like a one stop for knickknacks and shirts and some, like items that you use to dress up the house. And
well, there was oh my gosh, Payless Drugs had that. Thrifty Drugs had Woolworth. Okay, Woolworth.
Linda got it. Oh, yeah, yep. Linda got it twice. Linda was probably saying it twice, saying, "Dude, look at the darn chat." Yep. We had a Woolworths and now Snow Crusher. Mm-hmm. We had a Woolworth here at the mall. It's called the Mall of the Americas, but before it was called Midway Mall, because along the main road, which is Flagler, one of the main roads, but Flagler's a big one, named after Henry Flagler. It runs straight to downtown Miami all the way out here. We're on the extreme side of that. Midway was Midway Mall.
Yeah. Oh, okay, gotcha.
But today it's Mall of the Americas, whatever. Well, back in the day, it used to have a Woolworth in there.
Yeah.
And the reason I was bringing this up is that, well, we're talking about all these things. Some things match, some things don't. But I remember going there with my grandma and whatnot, and we'd go into that store, and they'd sell like wrapping paper and this, and that, and whatever. I never looked at it as anything spectacular whatsoever. It was just a store. You go in and they
Yeah.
have little things. But what's interesting is that now there's this whole nostalgia over it, that and many other things, where you see people really pushing the like memories of where they were located, and there's lots of things like that happening, which goes to the thing of we don't really know what we have until it's no longer there, and there's some nostalgic appreciation, this and that.
Well,
Whatever.
there's a big nostalgic thing around here. This area is pretty good at that. I mean, they'll still tear stuff down, but they somehow memorialize it. Like, for instance, Greyhound stop. There used to be a big Greyhound bus terminal here in town in Medford. Well, they basically closed it down and moved operations up north a ways. And so the old depot was basically, for all intents and purposes, closed. And another company bought the lot. But I don't know if you remember the old Greyhound bus terminals. They were Art Deco or Art Nouveau. It had a lot of arches and a lot of curved front buildings with glass block instead of windows and things like that. And it was old, it was dated, but it still looked cool. Well, what they did was when they bulldozed that building, they took down the front of it, that big arch that said Greyhound, and took down that arch, took it apart, set it aside, bulldozed it, and made a park on that lot. The city owns it now, but they put that arch back up. And it's just kind of that nostalgic nod to what used to be there. On the subject of Woolworths, and it's odd because it's like 2 blocks away, on the corner of 6th and Central in Medford, the whole bottom floor of this one building was Woolworths. The administrative offices were the 2nd floor up. Well, they had this big wraparound red belt right there where the 2 floors met. You know, the top of the 1st floor and the floor of the 2nd floor, and it's Woolworths, and then some brass trim around the corner, and then Woolworths, and again, curved front. Well, they went in when Woolworths closed down. They went in and subtly changed that sign to where it now is old Woolworths building. So that big Woolworth is still there. They're still getting advertising, even though they're gone. But just people didn't want to take that sign down.
Yeah, there's nostalgic stuff. There's a Firestone building, or a Goodyear building, Firestone, and it's on the corner of like Northwest 7th and I want to say somewhere in downtown. I can't. And we used to frequent that as a kid all the time, because all the Cubans converged there when they first came over from Cuba. Exile community in that little Havana area. And all the stores, by the time I came around, it was already set in its ways. But just prior, like 10, 15 years prior, when the whole thing, because I was 75, 65. So yeah, just 10 to 12 years, about 15 years prior, all these people were converging and arriving from Cuba. Which is an amazing thing to think about, because it seems so distant from the 15 years, as we both know, is neither here nor there in the great scheme of things. But this corner was where a lot of stores. What was that?
Is it not now? It doesn't.
No, not now. It doesn't. 15 years is like a drop in the bucket. So all these stores had so my grandmother and I would walk down to all the different shops because she wanted to do her shopping. And I was a little kid experiencing things for the first time. And all the shops, everybody knew each other, which is funny, because all the people from Cuba came here and they knew each other. And many of them opened stores. So we'd walk into the shoe store and she'd say, "Oh, look, this is the shoe guy from such and such." And I'd just be like, I have no point of reference to none of it. I'm just a little kid. And all these people knew each other, but not from there, from another country. It was a surreal. Imagine a kid exploring that it's just mind blowing. And there's lots of little stores. Well, as we walked to the side, there's this huge scaffolding, a building,
Mm-hmm.
and then above scaffolding and a huge sign, Firestone.
Mm-hmm.
Huge sign. And it was just, and it took over just almost a whole block.
Mm-hmm.
It was a massive thing. It seemed so imposing, and I always wanted to go there, but there's no reason. My grandmother, due to automobiles, um,
Yeah.
reason for going there. But I would tell her, "Oh, can we cross over there?" She said, "No, there's nothing over there to go." Because for her, it wasn't. But
Yeah.
I wanted to experience this huge scaffolding thing. Anyways, that building
Mm-hmm.
was there forever and a day, and then at some point recently, and still sort of there, but recently got turned into like a Walgreens.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this weird structure with the actual building it, because you go in with for
Yeah.
tires and this, and so you had a lot of parking space, and it was all undercover. It was a very odd building. Well, today it's a very unique looking Walgreens.
Mm-hmm. There's a place down here in Medford called the Sign Dude, and they make vinyl signs and banners and flags and stuff. You see the flags that's got the pole that kind of goes up and then curves at the top, and it's a
Yeah.
real thin flag. They do those. They do all that stuff. Well, before it was that, it was a pizza joint. And you walk into the place, and the counter is right where the counter was when you ordered pizza. They moved all the tables out, and it's still the same black and white checkerboard tile on the floor, but now they've walled a whole bunch of stuff off, and that's where they do the actual printing and the making and the ordering and all this other good stuff. And it's weird to walk in there and not look up for a menu board. It's still, before that, it was Jack's Drive-In. It was a burger joint, and there was a big old long curb that ran the building sets off to one side on the lot, and there was a big old long curb, and you would pull in there and park, and there were menus on poles that stuck out, and you'd order through a speaker, and they'd bring your food out. You just ate in your car. And they took all that stuff out and turned it into a pizza joint. Now it's a sign company.
Yeah, it's such an incredible thing to experience. I mean, just it's an incredible. My grandma, just another one of the things when we did those walking around town things, we'd walk by the McDonald's, and I don't know if I don't know if it's due to how good it tasted back then compared to now, or if it changed, or if it's just me getting the age thing. But she would say, "Do you want an ice cream?" I said, "Yeah, of course." She would say no. And we walk into the freaking McDonald's, and she says, "What do you want? Vanilla?" And she says, "Do you want caramel or chocolate? Chocolate. Do you want peanuts on it? Peanuts." And I'd end up with this freaking thing, and it was such a enjoyable, those early type of things with family and such, and the visuals of where you're walking around and such, and all these things inevitably leave impressions and stuff. I've said and stuff in every other. It leaves impressions that it's very difficult to forget these things, and are very special when you're reflecting about the past. All those places are no longer around, is what I'm saying.
It's fun to me to see buildings that I know what they were get repurposed for something else. Like we just picked up sandwiches on the way home today. Right across the street from the sandwich shop, it was an old Shell station, gas station. Now it's a pharmacy, but you can tell it was a gas station. The gas pumps are gone. The island is gone, but the big awning out front is still there. You can see where they filled in the roll-up doors, kind of like what Jerry was talking about. It was gas pumps and a garage. You can see where they took down the roll-up doors and filled it in, and now they have regular glass doors like you're going into any other place of business. But you look at it, the way it was built, the architectural style, you say that was a gas station. I love old stuff like that. I don't know if they did this in Florida, but out here in the West, when Taco Bell first opened up, every one of their buildings looked like an old California mission.
Yeah.
Had the bell on it, and it looked like Adobe block and everything else.
What I'm
It
doing,
it is funny to me, and I can take you to a place right now. It is hilarious to me to see one of those buildings that Taco Bell moved out of. They moved down the road, is now painted bright purple, and it's a Vietnamese place. So you have a bright purple old California mission looking building that is selling Vietnamese food.
it's just a perfect mismatch throughout time.
It's absolutely hilarious to me.
Let me share this because
Okay.
I want you to see the. I mean, it's as best as I could do, considering the time constraint of us talking and thing. But I want to present the share screen. Share. Tell me if you can. Well, there. Tell me if you could see.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the actual one.
Okay.
And it used to read Firestone up here.
Okay. So it's the same scaffolding and the same sign posts. It's just the different sign on it now.
Yeah, and maybe this looks different too. I mean, this was there,
Mm-hmm.
but it seemed more rust or raw metal like
But
back in the day.
but you can still look at that. I can still look at that, and I can see that that used to be something automotive. That big wide awning out there, that big huge cover,
Yeah,
and you can. I'm pointing at the picture like you can see it. The Where that truck is parked up underneath the awning there behind right up above that, those two lines of windows, you can see a dividing line in between those two lines of windows that separated the roll-up doors,
mm-hmm, yep,
and they have bricked up and obviously put up more stucco. I wouldn't be surprised to see over on the other side around the corner from it, uh, there used to be more there.
yeah,
I'm willing to bet you.
yeah. So
And
this
that
is
and that's exactly the kind of thing that I'm talking about. I dig that thing. That kind of thing just kind of tickles me. You can see what it used to be, but it ain't that no more. It's completely
exactly,
different.
yeah. It's like an odd in between place where the past is still there, but not. It just
Yeah. I dig that kind of stuff. I think that kind of thing is fun.
yeah.
Let's see here. Jamie, howdy, Jamie says, I see a post on a local Facebook page today. The local council are destroying so many historic buildings near me, replacing them with houses or apartments. Well, um, okay, he goes on. He says they are knocking down local winter gardens, and the Beatles played there amongst many others. Yeah, there are a lot of venues, a lot of historic buildings being torn down. The problem is
I love how he.
sometimes there's not a lot of interest in saving it because it's going to cost so much money to bring it back into usable condition. It's cheaper to knock it down and start over.
There's only one way to stop this, Jamie Page, and that's to go to your local museum and throw paint on expensive uh, paintings.
Yeah. Go down and buy a slush puppy, go buy a slushy, and throw it on the painting, and that'll get your point across.
I mean,
um and I'm with you, Jamie. I think that is, and in some cases I think it should be a crime, but you also have to look at the practical side of it, in that if there's interest and you have the financial backing to do it, I'm all for saving it. I mean, over in Europe and over in the UK especially, they have certain classifications of listed buildings where they're of historical significance, they're in danger, and they're looking for people to actually come in and renovate these things. They really want it, but there's a lot of regulation with it. They want it done with materials of the time. They want it done in the style of the time. So, there's no painting it purple and opening up a Vietnamese joint in there.
I'll just say this.
But,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
but I'm all for saving all of that. If you can save history, save it.
I think that like a place like Dover Castle,
Mm-hmm.
that location, easily bulldoze down, create the brand new Walmart up on that
Mm-hmm.
up on that height,
Mm-hmm.
and you can even light pathways into this grand entrance of Walmart.
Even better. Paint the whole outside of it with blackboard paint so people can pick up chalk there from the cliffs and just write their graffiti right on it.
Tim and Alice were here,
Yeah, that's it.
or bust.
So
No, but like if you, I'm sure someone out there that has a lot of money into invest is saying this damn castle is in the way. If we could only just get a few burger joints in this spot, this would be perfect. I'm sure there's people like that.
yeah. Oh, you know it. I mean, get rid of this dusty old thing, dude. That's the Washington Monument. Yeah, well, so what? I don't know.
This Martha's Vineyard thing here. We can easily, like, how many we can put a strip mall in here with arcades and whatnot, or whatever the hell.
Well, I mean, it depends on what you're talking about, because I've been saying the UN should go condo for about 30 years, but I mean,
no, but you may, but let's be, well, I'm going to take that back. There's definitely people that are quite willing. I mean, look, we have a bridge here that used to be a one entrance bridge. Back in the day, if you were coming in from the outside, you had to wait for people that are on the bridge to get. It was one way, or it was one passage. You could go in and out, and then they said no, only out. So originally, back in the day, you could only exit Sweetwater through that bridge.
Oh, okay. There were other roads, obviously, because how do you get out if you can't get in to begin with? But yeah, okay.
That one bridge was a small one, and it was convenient for the locals, but there was a main way. There were two main ways. Well, actually, originally there was two main ways, and this was a third, but convenient. Well, later they said no more in and out because maybe too many accidents and stuff, or just people and having to back. Then it was just out, and then they took it, lifted it, moved it like 12, 15 feet, 16 feet over, and in its place they built a bad to the bone brand new thing. So we still have the original bridge, just scooted over like 20 feet or so.
Yeah, it's a pedestrian bridge now,
and it's a pedestrian bridge now.
Okay, well, see, there's still some use in that. There's still some value in that.
I think so. It's a way of preserving the thing.
The railroads down in Carson City, Nevada, the railroad came and went, and it ran downhill from Virginia City, where the silver mines were, down into Carson City, and then ran out up to Reno, and then eventually out to San Francisco. Well, after the interstates opened and they stopped running passenger trains as much out there, it just kind of went into decline. And over the years, the railroad track was pulled up. I mean, the old roundhouse in Carson City, where the trains would go in onto this big, huge turntable, and it was all steam powered. They would actually turn the whole turntable around and turn the locomotive around and face it the other direction to go back out. That was all taken out of there and bulldozed and all that other good stuff. They got a bunch of investors to come in, and they extended the rail line from Virginia City back down into an area called Mound House, and then down into Carson City. And when they did that, they needed a bridge to go over the highway, 5-lane highway, 2 lanes each direction, left turn lane in the middle. There was a railroad bridge being taken down in Las Vegas that was around that vintage, early 1900s. It was newer than the original railroad, but they actually took that bridge down, put it on flatbeds in sections, brought it up, put it back together, and then hung it back over that freeway, and then continued the track. And as far as I know, it's going all the way down into Carson City now because they had just finished that when we moved up here.
Nice.
Now it's taking that old, because that old railroad bridge was going to just be cut up for scrap steel.
Right.
Taking that old bridge and putting it back to use for its intended purpose. And I mean, they had engineers out there doing this, that, and the other. And, so it was done right. It was done the right way. And it was overseen by the Department of Transportation and all that other good stuff because it goes over a U.S. highway, U.S. Highway 50. But I like to see that being put into use. And I like to see some of that revival coming back. And you know what? That train makes several trips. It just goes from Carson City from the outskirts of Carson City up into Virginia City. But I've never seen that train empty. It makes several trips a day. And people just like that experience of getting on an old Western locomotive, which it is, it's a steam train, coal fired, and getting on that old Western locomotive and then heading up into mining country. It's a big draw.
There used to be a time when Western entertainment and Western this and that was one of the entertainment bits that were steadfast. I mean, it still is, but I'm saying that out of all the options, that was like a mainstay back in the day. Like kids wanted to be cowboys.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, that was the thing. And that the options have now. That's a whole industry of entertainment for kids that is sort of like now just another variation out there.
Oh, Linda throws in here. She says, I still remember seeing that engine, that locomotive, on a flatbed being pulled by a semi going down the road next to our house. Yeah, I think she was trying to make a right turn onto the highway and the semi was coming. So she waited, pulled out and looked, and it's a locomotive. She got in behind it. What the hell? But yeah, right there, talking about the Westerns. I don't know if you've ever seen the Clint Eastwood movie Honky Tonk Man with his son, Clint Eastwood and his son. That was filmed right there where we lived.
I don't remember. What was it about?
Oh my gosh.
I probably did see it. If it's in, was it in the 80s or 70s?
Yeah, it was made in the it was 80s.
I probably did see it, but I don't remember it. I mean,
okay. Of course, some of the most famous ones, The Misfits, was shot out there. Marilyn Monroe, Clark Gable. You were talking about Bonanza one time, and I think we talked about this. The set that they used for all the outdoor scenes for the town, the city that they were supposed to be going to, that was on Lake Tahoe, and it was not too far from our house. The opening credits, they come riding down this hill and pull up and stop at the camera. I could take you to that meadow right now, and you could stand there and check it out. It's right along the highway up at Lake Tahoe. That entire area was where, a lot of Westerns were filmed because it's so sparsely populated.
I mean, it was such a clean, good, fun show.
Well, it was very much so. Wholesome, I guess you could say.
It was good. It was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah, I could take you to all kinds of sites that were used in various movies and thises and that's all over the place. But, we lived in a town of 1,300 people, and you didn't have to go off the highway very far, and you would swear you were out in the middle of the Old West. I mean, you can still go out in the desert and find some of the original telegraph lines with cast iron wire still standing and the wire still strung in them. You get so many miles down the line and a pole is over and the wire's on the ground because nobody cares anymore. They're not being used, but it's still there. Nobody ever came and got it. Why would you? You know, you find parts of wagons and old cars and I mean, all kinds of stuff that, from people just traveling around out in the desert, going from
We
point A to point B.
we may have talked about this particular little variation, but just so, but I'll mention now, just as the final
Mhm.
throws, as we head in the final throws of things. Um, we have a memory, a cultural memory
Mhm.
of so many years, whatever that might be, and it may vary from person to person. But collectively, there's a barometer, and so there's bookends to, well, the one bookend is the current moment now, but the extreme bookend. Here's my question to you: how far back in our timeline of America, United States of America, does the general average public, Joe Public, or family nucleus or whatnot, how far back do they culturally, pop culturally, or just where does that line, that once you cross it going back in time, that the imagery and notions and language little bits and historical notions and such, when does it just sort of become a little puff cloud into nothingness? And in a general sense, where is that line? Where,
Um,
yeah.
I think man, there are so many variables here because a lot of it is so cultural. Um, our mutual friend Doc Hildebrand, his family is mainly Italian. And some of the things that they do go back a couple hundred years. The collective, you're talking about the collective memory of the family. I know.
But that's common to the United States history is what I'm getting at. So let me rephrase it in another way, probably
Then
worse.
you're looking at 20. Then you're looking at 20th century because I don't think most folks could relate to anything to do with horses. So it would be sometime in the 20th century. We're talking cars, we're talking electricity, we're talking refrigeration.
So
Um,
so at that moment when all those things came online,
it would be somewhere in that era.
so
I
20s,
don't,
30s, 40s.
yeah, somewhere in that neck of the woods. I don't know that most folks could relate to anything 1800s, even 1890s. They might be interested in it, but let's put it to you this way. The Andrews sisters did Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy. That song is coming up on not it's not too far from 100 years old. It's kind of looked at with a little bit of,
Passe.
oh, not only passe, but it's kind of campy and funny. And oh, look
As
how
opposed to a
cute that
serious.
was, as opposed to being serious. Yeah. I think musically, if you listen to Scott Joplin, the entertainer, you would get it, but it's still um that type of piano. God, I'm trying to remember what the heck it was called.
Rag.
Ragtime. It's
Rag.
still that ragtime sound that is 100 years old. That's over 100 years old. Most folks couldn't relate to it. But then again, there's blues music that's over 100 years old that folks relate to every day. So I think, but in our overall collective psyche,
Yeah.
we could probably go back into 30s,
Where it's
but
still
fairly modern.
that we could still sort of like associate in a
Hmm.
general. I'm talking about in a general sense,
Yes.
because no one here, unless, well, there's still people around, our grandparents and great or just grandparents from the 30s and 20s, but that generation is on its way. At currently, the people that were born in the mid to late 20s, like my grandmother was born in 27,
Mm-hmm.
and she passed just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Or a year and a half ago. She just passed away. She was born in 1927.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my grandfather on my father's side was born in 1911. So at this point, he'd be like 100 and something years old.
Yeah.
And then some. Um, but these are people that those notions that we're just talking about now would have grasped it like that.
Yeah.
So like my
See?
grandmother, all my grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
if asked the same question, would
Mm-hmm.
have said, here you go, here's a bunch of things just like that. But
Yeah.
what a difference it makes 1 to 2 generations removed.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I'm the old man of the family, and I was born in 1961. I can trust my memory back to the mid 60s. I have flashes of things earlier than that,
But
you know.
culturally,
But culturally, I have watched the popular culture. I've watched movies and listened to music from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So I can, and I also talked to people and lived with people
that
who
we're
were
also
alive
aware
in
of.
those times.
Exact. And so that's
So I
forwarded.
so I get that second hand through them, but I can't relate to anything earlier than that. I can't relate to hitching up a team and plowing acreage. My grandfather did it for the first 25 years of his life. But I can't relate to that. I have no, other than what I've seen on in movies or on TV. That's as far as I can go.
And yet,
You know?
if you think about it, you're just 1 to 2 steps away
Yeah,
from those very things.
I'm 40 years away from it. You know, my grandmother was born in 1920. I was born in 61. She was 41 when I was born. So the things that she tells me about, I can relate to through her secondhand, but that's about it.
And another way to think about it, which is that's totally the case, but another way to think about it, in the way I'm thinking about it as well,
Mm-hmm.
is that person removed from, as far
Mm-hmm.
as just one person ago,
Yeah.
or two people ago,
Yeah.
um, that you're removed from, but yet in a direct succession of,
Mm-hmm.
they were doing X, Y, and Z. That's a big deal. You know, I'll just say, just to wrap up, this is just a broad thing, but I just wanted to see what you said. And I agree with you. I think the 1800s, or even to be honest with you, I think 30s is pushing it. But once you get into crossing over into the 1800s, and we're talking about general public at large,
Yeah.
in a general sense, you can forget about it.
Yeah.
You can forget about it.
I mean, unless you're interested in that kind of thing, unless you're
It's
interested in history of
yeah.
Civil War or the Great Migrations Out or Transcontinental
That's
Railroad or something like that, then yeah.
that's just one person's proclivity to
Mm-hmm.
engage in that little area.
Yeah.
But in a general sense, across like American culture today, um,
Well,
I'll tell you something. Well, go ahead. Well, let me just say real quick, um, dude, dude. The so when I was coming up, the '60s was considered, man, that was an era. Now people
mm-hmm.
talk about the '80s.
Mm-hmm.
I see it in comments all the time. Man, I wish it was the '80s, man. The '80s were so. I mean, I
Oh
was never in
yeah,
the '80s, but I love the '80s. The '80s, and they've created their own snapshot of what
myth.
the '80s
Yes.
was, which
Yes.
is the same thing that was happening.
And every generation does that. 70s kids think the 70s was the best. 60s kids think the 60s was the best. 50s kids thought the 50s were the best. So that's, I mean, that's universal. Every generation thinks that the generation they grew up in was the best.
Mm.
And I really hope that never changes.
Yeah, because
But
it's a progression. It's a pass it
yes,
forward.
but you are more studied about the eras, and it's because of your musical interest, I'm sure.
It's mainly.
You're more studied about the eras before you
Mhm.
than a good many people. because I think the overwhelming proportion of 30 to 40-year olds these days, I haven't even gotten into the teenagers in the 20s.
Yeah, that's
They don't even think about anything back in the 60s
no,
or the 70s
no, no.
because it just doesn't interest them. And why should it? I mean, that's fine. That's their choice.
Of course.
But we have people of voting age now who we have people who have kids who can't relate to anything in the 1900s because they were born in 2000 or 2001 or 2002. And it is kind of hard for me to think about. I'm still a 1900s guy. It's hard for me to think that we're 23 years into the 2000s and it's like, holy crap, where did it go?
I'm like you. I consider myself a 1900s guy. Um, because my first impressions occurred in the 1900s.
Yep.
My likes and dislikes, my growing up, my adulthood, beginning adulthood, everything. And the 2000s, well, it is what it is. But
Sure.
in reality, a lot has happened in the 2000s. But it's just,
Oh yeah.
it's just, it is what it is. We're people of our era, but at the same time, we're people of this era. So it's a funny sort of
it
thing.
is, because I wouldn't give up what I have now. I wouldn't give up all the benefits of 2023. I wouldn't give it up now. And I lived most of my life never knowing that stuff, never having any concept that anything like this would ever appear. But I wouldn't give it up. I wouldn't go back.
I didn't believe there was back in the day. I didn't believe there would have been a time that everybody owned a computer.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I thought that was something my dad and a select few people just like to do.
Yeah.
But I found no practicality unless you're into like charts or some sort of like, typewriting thing.
Bases and things like that. But we've come kind of full circle on that because nobody owns a computer now.
Oh yeah, but
we're weird. Everybody uses their phone. We're weird in that we still own desktop computers. It's like, what do you think this is? The 1990s?
Yeah, well, but then again, wait till they need glasses. We'll see what they think.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, you just wait, because you think that little phone is going to suffice when they get up into the stratosphere of time.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for the next thing to come along. And 30 years from now, they'll be going, phone? You still have a phone? What the hell kind of dinosaur are you? Yeah. Yeah. See, Jerry's like me. He has more than 10 computers in his house. I can reach out right now, right here. And I've thinned the herd a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can touch 8 computers. And I've got 3 more over there. So I'm down to 11 in this room. Not to mention 1 in the living room and 2 more in the bedroom. And 2 in the shop. Like I said, I can't go back and I won't go back. That's a deal breaker to me. If I can't have broadband, I can't live there. No, I won't go back to dial up. See, I still have to have it. I still have to have my computer and stuff, but I will not go back. No.
But it would be a curious sort of just practice or whatever review if we could be transported to a point in time in the past when we were little or whatnot and had the experience of seeing what the day, let's say a full day or 2 days, occupying ourselves and watching. I mean, we would be completely mind blown. First of all, I would be, because we would see that difference that we can't tell because it's been gradual.
Yeah,
but I'm sure that there's a level of simplifying going back in time that's more significant than we can properly imagine today.
Well, we're talking about it last week when I said social media is antisocial. causes us to be antisocial. When you stop and think about our interactions with people on a daily basis, they were person to person.
Mhm.
You know, you got up on Saturday morning, maybe you'd have a bowl of cereal, maybe you'd watch some cartoons, but then you had your clothes on and you were outside.
Yeah.
Jump on your bike and you would go look for the bikes. Where were all the bikes in the neighborhood? If
Mhm.
they were over at Jimmy's house, that's where you went. Are we playing in Jimmy's yard? Are we going to go play baseball? Are we going to go do what? You would go miles away from your house on your bike with your friends and go you splash around on the canal or do whatever it was. And then, but you knew when to come home. You always pushed it a little bit,
Especially when you got hungry,
but you knew when to come home because it was getting close to dinner time and your mom was going to get mad if you didn't do it. So,
and the
you know,
amount of exercise that one got
uh-huh.
was on a constant basis, dude. It was like we were always on our and sweating, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Come home with wet shoes, squeaking as you got off your bike and started walking up towards the front porch. Your mom, you take those shoes off. You ain't wearing them in my house. Something like that. I mean, but all of our socializing was done face to face, person to person, and it's not anymore. And I think that has led to more. I can't prove it. It's just a theory. I think it's went. I think that's led to more antisocial behavior because we're not. I mean, we make excuses not to interact with people.
People are a downer, dude.
We were just talking about pumping gas, having a guy come up and pump gas, and you didn't like that idea at all.
No, people are a downer. The more you learn, or the
I
more I learn, I don't know
Mhm.
what other people learn, but the more I learn, the more variables you throw into something, the more complicated it becomes,
Mhm.
and you're looking for trouble. And it leads. Actually, we can tie this to this. It leads to this because human beings, even if they're speaking the same language,
Mhm.
everybody's an independent little satellite floating through space. And what happens is that even if the language is the same at one level,
Mhm.
definitions and the importance that people place on certain strings of words may differ just enough to create a catastrophe, a misunderstanding,
Yeah.
inflection that might rub someone the wrong way. So the
And
more you interact, the worse it could, more potential for problems.
today, yes. But back then, when everybody was interacting, it wasn't that much of a problem. If you had a store clerk rude to you, that son of a gun was fired and there was somebody else in there the next week. If you had somebody mouthing off at you while he's pumping your gas, he wasn't there long because the only thing, like gas stations, the only thing this gas station has to offer that's different from the gas station across the street is service. We're selling the same gas, we're selling it for the same price. The only thing I can do to get you to come to me instead of him is give you better service. And if that means handing you a free Coke with a fill up, by God, I'll do it.
Last thing
You
I'll
know?
say, one other thing I'll
So,
say. Let me throw this at you. Just this
mhm,
one last thing. This is, I might even say it messed up because the idea is not fully cemented, but I want to throw it out there.
mhm,
An impression. We're here now in 2023. Get this. It may be stupid, but I'm going to say it anyhow. And we're interacting, you and I, and all of us here and whatnot. Um, and we have had years and decades behind us and whatnot. You remember people back then,
mhm,
maybe in a job you worked, or friends
mhm.
that at the time they were the people surrounding you at that moment in life in those decades back then
Sure.
that you no longer interact with now,
Mhm.
but are probably walking around now as a now person. But in your mind, the image you have of these people, the
Is
memory,
yep.
is a snapshot
Yep.
placed in that era of these people. So when you run into,
Guilty.
and so when you run into one of these people, which I have, I have no other way than that they're connected to an era for me.
Mhm. Yeah.
Although they're a modern person as everybody
Mhm.
else, but to me, they hold a certain
Yeah.
classification of importance
Mhm.
because they're from that. What do you say about that?
I have only run into one or two people from my past that I hadn't seen in a long, long time, and one of them was a cousin, and I did not know who she was. She looked nothing like I remembered her. Nothing like her.
Where's the pigtails?
Well, it was just, I was gone for 30 years.
Yeah. Where's the darn braces
But there
and
are
the
people
pimples?
I think of back in high school down in California that I've not run across them. I found one on Facebook that I went to high school with in California. She now lives in Texas. We have not interacted at all, but I still think of her in that context of how she looked in high school,
It's incredible.
you know. And all of my friends are that way. All my high school friends are that way. I still think of when I think of them, I get those glimpses of how they looked in high school. And
Did
it's
you
always
ever?
going to be that way.
Yeah. Did you ever have pimples?
Oh God, yeah.
Okay, so I did too. I mean, most kids, hormones and
Yeah.
whatnot, whatever. But I remember in school,
Mm-hmm.
and I had pimples, and it used to be, and like I would get them randomly, and I'd get them like in the forehead.
Mine were down here, right underneath there.
Well, that's even worse because you can't put a mask on.
Nope.
What I would do, I would comb my hair down. So,
Yeah.
a lot of the '80s photos were ways of covering where
Oh yeah.
it was very uncomfortable because you have that and you're very why is that darn red thing there? And I go
Yeah.
to my mom, why is this happening to me? It was like the end of the world. It's a
Yeah.
freaking pimple.
Mhm.
But still. And so no, that's normal, son. No, I don't care if it's normal. I don't want
Yeah.
more. Get rid of it. And so we go down to the
God.
thing and we get the little pads and the thing
Mhm.
to clean it up and
Yeah.
it wouldn't work. It would turn it red,
Clearasil, you know.
but it would still get redder anyhow.
Yeah.
Nothing could
No.
work. Well, I remember in school a kid telling me, "Hey man, look over there. That's pimple face." And there was a
Mhm.
kid that had a lot of pimples,
Mhm.
more than I did, and I would break out every now and again, and I couldn't laugh at it because I was self-conscious about my own pimples. I was saying, "How dare you call this
Yeah.
poor guy pimple?"
It's
So I
like, dude.
remember it was all self-conscious. So talking about going back in time, the self-consciousness was also there because we're growing and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but that stuff
Yeah.
sucked.
I had braces from the 6th grade to the 8th grade. And I mean, with the whole thing, the big wire thing and the strap around the back of my head, the whole damn thing.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of like
And
an
that,
extreme.
I mean, you want to talk about somebody calling people pimple face or pizza face or whatever. Try
Yeah.
walking around with, 5 pounds of hardware around your head. But it's like my dad was like, look, I'm paying so much damn money for this. You are going to wear this and you are
Here
going to
and
get
wear
your teeth
this
straightened out.
and wear this mohawk thing on your head too. And here's a
Oh,
googly
man.
eyes. Let's
And,
finish the whole project.
I gave the orthodontist a pass simply because he's doing what my father took me in for. And he tried to, they had you had the headband that went around the back of your head and kept it in place.
Yeah.
And he tried to give me a cool looking headband, but it didn't help.
No, there's no
I mean,
way.
you're talking about a big chrome thing that come around the sides of your face. And I mean,
Dude, that's
now braces are a fashion statement. I mean,
yeah.
not the headgear, the head hardware, but braces are is a,
That's a
well,
little bit
it was a fashion statement when I was in junior high school too. But that statement was,
dude, but it's like I would have fought that tooth and nail.
Well, I tried, but it was a losing argument.
So I'll just say one last thing because there was a kid, and this has nothing to do with that, but it just these things of kids are kids. There was we were all kids, and we were in school, and we're all like it was a weekend and whatever and this and that, and said, "Oh yeah, what did you do? Yeah, what did you do?" and stuff, and we're all sitting around and getting ready for class, and a friend of mine, um, he he said, "Oh, I went to the beach," and one of the guys looked and he said, "Dude, you still have sand in your ears. Didn't you shower?" He still had. There was literal. There was literal sand in his ears still, and we used to crack up. It's just stuff that it's just kids, dude. So just if you think of all the embarrassments and stuff that he,
but you know what? We lived through it. I mean, at the time it was devastating. At the time you didn't even want to get out of bed, take your head out from under the covers, let alone show your face in school again. But we lived through
it. And what's funny, the hairstyles and whatever, but still, give me a break. But what's funny is that even like things like gym shorts, what the heck were we doing? I wore these things that rode Mount Olympus, high and dry.
Yeah.
And what was that all about?
It was the style back then, man. Yeah. It was the style. I mean, I see that a lot with people watching basketball now. The shorts are down to their damn knees. Mm-hmm. It's like we wished we had gym shorts that were that long, because ours, we were lucky it covered both cheeks of your butt.
It was practically a Brazilian freaking thong that we were wearing.
Just about. And,
it's unbelievable, dude. Anyways.
But I've said it before and I'll say it again. The dumbest thing about that era was the way we dressed. But we thought we were cool.
The 80s hairstyle. Well, we'll leave it at that because there's a lot. There's a lot of there.
There's a lot to unpack there, yeah.
Well, folks, we hope you enjoyed it. We go live every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time. This is the Trampled Underfoot podcast show. So you can catch us here next week, Tuesday, Trampled Underfoot podcast on YouTube. We also have a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. You can catch our past episodes there. So check that out. Press the Wayback Machine button, and you can download those episodes to your podcast, your computer, etc., and enjoy them on the go. And we have a site over on Facebook where we post the images, video links, and anything other that we discuss here at the show. So you can be sure to check that out if you wish over on Facebook, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook. And we're also sponsored by
Harneal Media, your web solution. Look, if you're looking to expand or create a web presence, there's no better way to do it than with a website. And Steve over at Harneal Media is the only guy I will ever recommend to anybody. That's Harneal Media, HARNEAL media.com, sponsor of Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com.
You shortened that part up a little bit. I was doing some nasal saline.
I got lost.
I was doing some.
I couldn't remember what I said. Don't get old. It's not for sissies.
No, but well, talking about old, I have a little bit of stuffiness. So I said, I said I've got X amount of time to do this. So I turned everything off and I started doing this, and all of a sudden you're ending it, and I'm like,
oh,
what do I do?
I'll just tap dance a little bit. Eloy's hitting the bottle again.
In any event, enjoy the rest of your week, guys. Enjoy. Have a good time. We'll catch you here next time. Be safe. Ciao. Peace.
Yep. Have a good one. Thanks for spending some time with us.